Hello again, internet friends. Today I wanted to talk to you about some unhelpful shit to say to someone with a mental illness. I've lived with mental illness for most of my life. I was formally diagnosed with a handful of conditions when I was a teenager. And so I've had the official mentally ill label for a while. And in that time, I've had plenty of well-meaning people give me feedback or advice that basically sucked. It wasn't helpful, and in some cases, it was actively harmful for me to hear these things. So I figured I would talk with you about these phrases and their consequences, along with some alternatives that you can use the next time you find yourself with an opportunity to say something to someone who has mental illness. Let's get started. Number one, it's all in your head. I.e., your problems aren't real because they don't exist in the objective reality. Yes, it is in my head, where my brain lives. The same brain that controls the rest of my body. The same brain that's responsible for keeping me alive. The same brain that's in charge of the meat suit I currently inhabit. Problems that exist in my brain exist in the control center for my being. And so they have the potential to mess up literally the rest of my entire life and every single situation I walk into. Also, newsflash, reality is not objective. Reality is subjective. Perception creates reality. We all have our own way of viewing things, our own perspective on the world. And so my perception organ might work a little bit differently than yours does. But to me, it's very real because that's how I see things. That's how I experience things. Also, we don't do this sort of dismissive thing for conditions that involve other organs. Imagine hearing somebody has asthma or cystic fibrosis and responding like, oh, it's just your lungs. Like, it's just your lungs. It's just in your lungs. Like, come on. Or someone with diabetes and saying like, it sounds like it's a problem with your pancreas though, right? Like, it's just your pancreas. It's just your pancreas. For other illnesses, we don't tend to just chalk it up to the dysfunctional organ in a dismissive way. We recognize that bodies and their components are notoriously prone to failures and injury, and we don't disregard the consequences of those instances. Instead, we accept them and we seek to solve the problem, and the brain should be no different. So instead of saying it's all in your head, you could say something like, I'll try to understand. How can I support you? This validates the other person's unique experience and puts you in a position to be able to actually give them the support that they might be looking for. Often, we just want to be listened to after a lifetime of being ignored and dismissed. It may take way less than you think to provide support to your mentally ill person. Number two, you look good. You look fine. Looking well and being well are two entirely separate things. Your preconceived notions of what well or good looks like from the outside may not actually be accurate for what wellness or goodness truly is. Think about the bias in American culture surrounding health and weight ranges, for example. Culturally, a super thin aesthetic, recently referred to as heroin chic, is considered good. But the actual health ramifications for the lifestyle required to maintain that sort of appearance are far from wellness or goodness for the body. Additionally, assessing how I must be doing from the outside without considering what's going on inside is a very limited way of making a comprehensive assessment. I can look happy and feel like complete crap. It's called masking. And I've had to learn how to do it because when I look as bad as I feel, I'm subjected to an entirely different kind of poor treatment, including skepticism, ridicule, and even exclusion. So here's what you can say instead of saying, "You look good." Things can look misleading from the outside. How are you really doing? This acknowledges that things aren't always as they seem and invites the other person to give you an accurate, genuine report of what's going on for them. It doesn't assume that there is no issue. Instead, it lets your mentally ill person who is actually experiencing their life give you the status of the system from the inside. Easy peasy. Number 3. Everyone gets sad sometimes. While this point isn't untrue, it invalidates the severity of the symptoms that I live with on a regular basis. Sadness is not the same as depression. Feeling bummed out or low is not the same as feeling suicidal. Writing off my experience because other people also experience the spectrum of human emotion isn't cool, and it can encourage me to stop asking for help or support when I might truly need it. The existence or prevalence of other individuals who have a bad day doesn't absolve me from needing support when I have one. In fact, that kind of response would suggest to me that we have a need for more intentional community support and emotional resources, not less. If there are lots of people who are struggling, why don't we help them? Like, it's not a good thing if tons of people are having a hard time. And those people having a hard time other days doesn't make a damn difference for me who's having a hard time in this moment, in this body right now. What do you mean I forgot to record part of my script? I guess we're doing it now. So here's what you can say instead. You aren't alone, and you can get through this. I'm here for you. What do you need right now? Instead of zooming out and comparing your mentally ill person to everyone else on the planet, zoom in and remind them that they don't have to face their struggles as an island. Sometimes, even just knowing that another person is aware of your burden can make the load feel a little bit lighter. And asking for specifics on what might help that person move forward can expedite the process of them getting to a better place. Number 4, just get over it. Saying things like "just get over it" is reductionist. If it were possible to simply flip a switch in my head and never experience another flashback of my trauma, don't you think that I would take that option? I would not, and I don't actively choose to remain in my illness. I want to feel better, but it's more complicated than me just deciding to get over it. On a physiological level, my brain has sustained damage that could very likely affect its ability to function properly. An analogy that might be helpful would be considering an athlete who suffers an injury that tears their ACL. Even with the proper kind of treatment after the injury, there's a natural process of gradual healing that has to take place. And it's entirely possible that even after some time has passed, days, weeks, months, or years, the abilities of that athlete may not compare to their previous abilities or to the abilities of other similar athletes who go through similar injuries. So here's what you could say instead. Healing is complicated, and it can take a while. There's no rush. Simply allowing your mentally ill person to have the freedom and the space to heal at their own pace can do wonders for actually letting them heal. Once the pressure of a timeline has been lifted, it's much easier to be in the healing space, doing the work, learning new coping skills, crying it out, etc., without judgment or shame. And less pressure during healing tends to encourage better results. We're not going to get more better just because we feel bad about it. Trust me. Number 5, you're overreacting. To this, I want to say, what would be the point of me overreacting? What would be the net gain from consciously exaggerating the struggles that I have or the support that I might seek? If the answer coming to mind for you is attention, allow me to raise another point. Attention is a perfectly normal, healthy human need. Undermining my bids for attention, or more accurately, acceptance, reassurance, comfort, or support, is like criticizing someone for being hungry or seeking shelter. Silly person trying to survive so extra. Often, the people who are critical of my reactions and categorize them as being too much or uncalibrated are speaking from a place of ignorance. Not only do they often lack the understanding of the complexities of mental health, but they also usually can't relate to my personal experience of living through years of abuse or living through what should have been a fatal accident and sustaining a brain injury. They can't picture what it's like to live in a body like mine, and I have the wisdom to understand that. I realize that it might be hard to imagine what it would be like to wake up one day and know that you should have and nearly did die. But here's what you can say instead. It's hard for me to imagine what you've been through. Of course you feel that way. Even if you don't fully get it, you can show support to your mentally ill person by taking them at their word for the truth of their experiences. Questioning or dismissing their experience is likely to make them not want to open up and share in the future. And while the immediate benefit to you is that you don't have to listen to them talk about something you can't relate to, the risk for them is that they may decide against reaching out for support in the future when it's really needed, and that can increase the odds of permanent consequences for your mentally ill person. So that's it. 5 unhelpful phrases for someone with a mental illness, and 5 alternatives that I hope you try the next time you have an opportunity to say something to someone with mental illness. Reducing the stigma surrounding mental illness is also going to have to involve a reduction in the I know better than them perspective. And I just want to say, we're not stupid. We're sick or we're injured. And being sick and injured doesn't make us deserving of judgment and criticism. It makes us deserving of compassion and care and support. How else are we possibly expected to get better again without those things?